It is good to see you this morning. And somebody's already kind of stole my thunder, but first thing I was going to say this morning is I hope each of you enjoyed your summer, because we went from the 80s into the 40s like that. And I'm done with it, is all I can say. Appreciate you ladies coming and sharing about Care Portal. This is something that it is a ministry that we are now able to offer by partnering with them. And the greatest thing from my perspective as a pastor is when a need goes out, I know that it's already been vetted. Because one of the most frustrating things as a pastor is to sit in an office and have calls come in of people needing this or needing that. And first thing you do is find out if they're north of the river or south of the river. And, you know, we get calls from Raytown and Warrensburg and everywhere else. But they're trying to figure out if it's a legitimate need or not. And so I appreciate the vetting that Care Portal does. If you have your Bibles or New Testaments with you this morning, I invite you to turn yet again to Luke's Gospel, chapter 13. There are some verses that I want us to read this morning. And Luke chapter 13, I want us to begin reading in verse 31, where Luke tells his readers and us, "At that time some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, 'Leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you.' He replied, 'Go tell that fox, I'll keep on driving out demons and healing people today and tomorrow, and on the third day I will reach my goal. In any case, I must press on today and tomorrow and the next day, for surely no prophet can die outside Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left desolate. I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" Over the years, I have found myself engaged in numerous conversations with people about Linden. And one of the questions that invariably comes up in those discussions is often asked something like this: what kind of church is Linden? Or what's Linden like? And every time I'm asked that question, even over the years, I find myself thinking that's a little bit more difficult of a question to answer than might first appear on the surface. Because you see, the question they're asking is the question about people. It's about a group of people. It's about a group of people made up of individuals who have different thoughts and different opinions. You see, I find myself always trying to answer the question by saying that, well, we're a friendly church, or a mission-minded church, or we are a giving church. While at the same time, I truly understand that what they're really asking is, what kind of people attend Linden? So in addition to my previous answers, I respond that Linden is full of what John Claypool would refer to as fellow strugglers seeking to be faithful to our God. In short, Linden is a congregation that runs a broad spectrum. We run a broad spectrum theologically, economically, educationally, socially, and yes, even politically. Because the truth is, it's very hard to make any generalizations about any group of people. The fact is, we're individuals. and we're all different. But that difference doesn't stop us from reaching certain conclusions. Certain conclusions about churches, certain conclusions about race, about age, certain conclusions about socioeconomic classes. For example, the very first verse in our text this morning is a text that I find quite surprising. Luke says, at that time, some Pharisees came to Jesus and said to him, leave this place and go somewhere else. Herod wants to kill you. You ask, well, why is that so surprising? Well, a simple reading of the Gospels, we find that it could be very, very easy to conclude that all Pharisees were bad. The fact is, Jesus did constantly seem to be at odds with them. Or at the very least, there seemed to be this ongoing friction between Jesus and the Pharisees. But then we have to stop and remember Nicodemus, a Pharisee, who came to Jesus 3 times according to John's Gospel. In fact, Nicodemus went so far as to even assist Joseph of Arimathea in preparing Jesus' body for burial. And who can forget the Apostle Paul, a Pharisee among Pharisees who completely turns away from his life as a Pharisee in order that he might follow Jesus, following even to the point of death. So on the one hand, we have these two, Nicodemus and Paul. And yet on the other hand, we have those Pharisees who got together and conspired to kill Jesus. And in the middle of those two extremes, you may have the group in our text that didn't want Herod to kill him necessarily, but at the same time, they also were not ready to leave everything and follow Jesus either. And while you and I may never know to any degree of certainty their motive for doing what they did or saying what they said, it may have just been that according to a gentleman by the name of Paul MacDonald, the Pharisees who came to Jesus and made this statement were simply hedging their bets, if you will. Their thinking being, well, if he is the Christ, then we've done him a favor. And if he's not the Christ, then no one has to know that they had tried to help him. In short, what I think we find in this passage this morning are Pharisees who come to Jesus that in many ways are where I think many of us are. That is to say, we're happy to be Christian if in being a follower of Jesus, we're not asked to do anything that might get us into trouble. Or if in doing so, we find that it's not going to cost us anything. You see, the Pharisees, like the Pharisees in our text, we tend to believe that we can live life while having a foot in each camp. That we can be simultaneously citizens of two kingdoms, the kingdom of God and the kingdom of this world. We tend to believe that we can somehow follow Jesus without losing our place in this world. And what I find surprising is that Jesus, he's aware of that. You see, Jesus seems to know that the Pharisees have a foot in each camp and that he can simply go between the two of them with his message. Notice what he says to those Pharisees who came to warn him. Jesus looks at the Pharisees, he says, yeah, you just go tell that fox Herod that I'll drive out demons and heal people today and tomorrow and on the third day and I'll reach my goal. In any case, he says, I must keep going today and tomorrow and the next day. For surely no prophet can die outside of Jerusalem. Now let me give you the Webster translation of that. Jesus is saying to the Pharisees, you go and tell Herod, that conniving fox, who is nothing but a puppet ruler for the Roman Empire. You go and tell him that I will be here today, I will be here tomorrow, and I'm going to continually be committed to doing what God has me to do. I will move on in God's leading. Not out of fear. I'm going to remain focused. I'm going to remain strong. I'm going to finish my mission at a future time. You see, our problem is that unfortunately we somehow think we can control the fox. We somehow believe that we can bow to the fox Monday through Friday while maintaining our allegiance to Jesus until one day when we find that we are asked to choose sides. Jesus continues by simply saying, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you, how often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. It's an interesting metaphor, isn't it? God trying to gather his children together just as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. I mean, if we're talking about protecting, that's probably not what would come to mind when we first think of an animal. My guess is we might imagine a lion or an eagle. That is, we would imagine an animal with wings or with talons. And yet, the lowly chicken is the image that Jesus chooses to demonstrate this relationship between God and us. God, the mother hen, calls us to the safety of the nest beneath those downy wings, behind the heart that beats beneath that vulnerable breast. That's the imagery that Jesus chooses to use. Jesus knew his identity as a prophet. He knew his identity as the Son of God. Jesus knows the stakes of being who and what he is, and yet he's willing to follow God's call upon his life. Jesus sees the role of God as one of a mother hen, gathering her chicks under her protective wings, safe from the ravages of the foxes in life. Herod is a fox. And Jesus says, if you think you can serve two masters, if you think you can handle it all, you better be careful. Because given the chance, that fox, that is Herod, that is empire, will eat you alive. Take everything and leave you empty. You see, unfortunately, like the Pharisees in our text, you and I find ourselves navigating through two competing worlds. We choose to follow Christ to the cross while watching others who are willing to compromise their values, journey toward what our culture believes really matters. But here's the problem. The fox is in the henhouse. And the fox is not in this for your salvation. Okay? The fox is in the henhouse as credit cards promise happiness, but only deliver debt and stress and worry. The fox is in the hen house as the news assaults us with continual alarm, a fear of who's out there, painting those who are our opponents as liars. Oh, the fox is in the hen house, folks. He's in the hen house telling us that working 40 plus hours a week will pay off in time, but when the budget gets tight, guess what happens? The fox is going to lay you off and simply wish you good luck. The fox is in the hen house. And if you think that isn't real, then simply look at where the path led the Pharisees. You see, their houses were left desolate as the Roman Empire they had compromised with destroyed their homes. And as we discover later, would also destroy their temple, simply a few years after the death of Jesus. Now, I try to be candid and I try to be honest. And to be honest this morning, I simply have to say, you and I are in a difficult position. Because, like the Pharisees, we must on occasion give a nod to the fox. I mean, after all, there are bills to be paid, there's money to make, there are obligations to family, and after all, we don't want to look or act too strange to the point of scaring away friends or co-workers or family members. But don't be fooled. The fox is not worthy of our faith. Even though the fox would like for you and I to believe otherwise. As I said earlier, the fox is not in this for your salvation. He simply isn't. As a people of faith who find themselves living in a culture of fear, we have to be about calling the fox a fox. Talking about truth in a world of untruths and half-truths. Talking about what love really is in a world of pleasure and pleasing. We must be willing to prioritize our lives by what really, truly matters in the end. We have to be wise. And we have to speak up. You know why? Because if we don't, the fox is going to do it for us, leading others down a path of destruction. And while the fox may be more attractive on TV or in magazines, ready to offer you quick fixes and easy gain, keep this in the back of your mind. Only the mother hen will lay down her life for her chicks. The fox is indeed in the hen house. And only Jesus has laid down his life for you. Simply because of God's love for you. We end with John 3:16. For God so loved the world, that is, for God so loved you, that he gave his life. He gave the Son who gave his life, that those who believe in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. Even as the fox is in the hen house, may you and I be gathered under the wing of a God who protects us and keeps us safe.